with Dr. Abraham and Steve. Welcome to all of our viewers. And we're still a world in struggle, world in change.
Yeah,
Abraham, how are you?
good. Certainly, change is happening. Whether it can become revolutionary change or change, change to increase the domination and hegemony of the United States. I mean, it's still not decided.
Yeah.
However, um, the change can get worse, unfortunately. I'm as pessimistic about the movement itself because I find that the movement has turned into a reactionary direction because even podcasters like Sabi have jumped into this idea that it is Israel and the Zionist lobby that is directing all that happens here by way of the Epstein files. When in
Well,
fact, what we have happening, you know, the Zionist state's bombardment of Beirut on the first day of the ceasefire, so-called, which killed more than 350 perhaps people were killed and some thousands injured. Well, Trump contacted Netanyahu and ordered him to stop. And he did. No further bombardment of Beirut. There's the fighting in the south, which, the Zionist military, the IDF, the Imperial Death Force, is having its difficulties because they can't cope with the Hezbollah resistance, even without the participation of the Lebanese military to defend Lebanon. So Israel's been pushed back a lot, and in the great chess game here, has pulled back its piece that it tried to shove into Beirut. So, I mean, this is a demonstration and a proof, that Israel is subordinate to the United States of America and is a proxy and even a arm of the United States, totally defenseless without the armaments provided by the United States and economically dependent upon the United States, which finances all of this stuff to destroy. So, like to sort of assume that the poor old United States is being manhandled by Israel is not only reactionary, it's crazy, idiotic. But it's very popular amongst the movement people. So it's another reason for me to quit here, get out of this mess in the West, the mess in the West, and get into the real revolutionary process in Palestine, which is being ignored, in its fight against the colonists there who have become fascist militias and are not even being stopped by the Zionist military, which has been assigned to calm things down because it's embarrassing to Israel itself. So, but there's changes happening in Israel. That'll be an interesting milieu to get into as well, because Netanyahu has lost a lot of popular support because they're not able to win the war against Iran, period. Like as we discussed previously, when you are operating on the basis of the formal logic precept of might is right, might, determines what is right, and might creates right and all that. Well, as noted, during the history of the Tsar, when the Tsar's might, lost against the war in the East against Japan and was retreating in face of the Prussian military offensive in the First World War, well, his might, the Tsar's might, was no longer right. And therefore, amongst the general public, lost its credibility and lost its rationale and lost its reason to be might because it didn't win the right. The same thing is happening, with Netanyahu. He hasn't won the right, to be the might. And so he's on his way out. So who is, the Israeli popular opinion going to support in place of Netanyahu? Another right winger, Bennett. It's pitiful. Like such an accultured and educated, population that is supposed to be the Jewish people to fall into sort of this basket of right wingers, and, thinking in fascist terms because they still believe that might is right, even though they just lost. It's really pathetic. The Israeli national mind, as Hegel would put it, has been so corrupted, so lost. So, thing to do is to get in there and do something about it. And the credibility of the Jewish Bund, on the other hand, has increased, has just exploded with the favorable book review in the New York Times in favor and extolling the greatness of this new book by Molly Crabapple, which is Here's Our Home. And this is the translation of the Jewish Bund's concept of Dochkeit, meaning here-ness, that Jewish people live where they want to live. And the freedom to live where you want to live, the freedom to be an American if you want to be an American, freedom to be a Canadian or a Quebecois, is something that the Bund upholds with the appropriate institutions for national cultural autonomy and security. So the Bund, with Molly Crabapple in particular, have made a breakthrough. And the Guardian newspaper in England, which is the voice of the left, supposedly, has also come out with a book review, very favorable, which I've circulated on the Jewish Bundist email lists, for which anybody can send me a request to get included. Yes, I should reiterate that my email address is SAALAHA@FOKUS.name. That's the Jewish Bundist email address. And there's the Jewish People's Liberation Organization, otherwise known as the Jewish PLO list, which provides everyone with the daily documentation necessary to make the necessary analysis and conclusions on this ongoing campaign to build a movement. But we don't have a movement yet. No. There's popular sentiments which drive people on the basis of some kind of moralistic criteria. Look, they've killed so many people, they're bad, period, without any further analysis. And then when the Palestinians end up killing a bunch of soldiers on October the 7th, the same sort of mentality on the basis of their moralistic criteria suddenly sort of, like are silent. And they allowed the genocide to have been initiated and therefore provided it with a certain justification because they didn't object to it in the first instance. And that's, the time that's the most important, because after that, 3 months later, say, oh, like we're opposed to genocide. Why? You weren't opposed to it before, so therefore you have no credibility to oppose it now. And that's what happened in many places, including the Marx Mail list, which censored all of my objections to the Zionist assault on Gaza for about 3 months, called Marx Mail. It's 600, people who are associated with the Trotskyist movements of the United States and Canada, in particular the Socialist Workers' Party, the SWP, and the League for Socialist Action in Canada, who were the sections of the Fourth International. They were silent for 3 months. you know, really. They think they can make a revolution. No way. Can't even sort of make a statement, let alone a revolution. So I don't really participate with them anymore. And some of them are sort of, surprised. How come you're not talking, like to us anymore, now that the Bund has made a breakthrough with Molly Crabapple, they're sort of aware of this. If the New York Times, will say something, they'll agree to say it as well, But otherwise, when they're presented with an actual live, Bundist who is trying to sort of educate them as to the Jewish identity as distinct from Zionism, as to the uh, international revolutionary process that is necessary and promoted, by the Jewish Bund, because fascism was everywhere, therefore had to be opposed everywhere. A very simple conclusion for a Jewish Bundist to come to, but for leftists elsewhere, they all seem to think that they're involved in some sort of a national revolution only, and they couldn't care less about anybody else until it becomes popular to do so, in which case they'll speak up and say, yes, we are the highest epitome of morality, and we even support Jesus Christ. It's like I'm fed up with all of that nonsense. So I have a couple of things lined up to show people, but I wonder what you're thinking about the current negotiations that are taking place right now, but there in Islamabad and Pakistan. So,
Well, um, I'm not running a country. Right. I'm not the leader of a country representing a nation who's been bombed by the United States, whose girls were killed in the first act of aggression, whose leader was a victim of eldercide, whose health clinics have been destroyed, hospitals attacked. So I say that because, I'm a person on making a broadcast. And I have to give respect to the leaders of a country who have suffered this aggression, not only during this last 40 days, but the last 30 some odd years. Okay. So I don't want to think that I have the solution for the Islamic Republic of Iran in negotiations with the United States. I'm just going to say this as a victim of the US, expect nothing from the United States ever. Now, I have the crazy view, and I was corrected by a friend last night in the conversation. I, if Israel could bomb the negotiations, they would bomb the negotiations.
mm,
That is my view, but I was corrected. They say, well, no, they can't do that because the United States is present at the negotiations, and they would therefore kill U.S. members of the presidential cabinet and the representatives of the U.S. for negotiations. So I have to pull back my view of that, but I still think that.
mm.
I think Israel is a wild card in the U.S. arsenal of allies and of surrogates.
Yeah, you're
And
right. Israel's always trying to inject itself in there somehow, some way.
and I therefore Pakistan has been on high alert. I hope that their military is on high alert. I hope that their missile defense is on high alert because I put nothing past Israel.
Yeah.
If you think Israel won't do something, remember the pagers. Remember the pagers.
Mm.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
just remember the pagers. That took years to carry out, and they still carry it out. So the negotiations, I don't know. Did the U.S. negotiate with Hiroshima and Nagasaki with the Japanese after they destroyed them with a nuclear weapon? I don't think so. Did they negotiate with the Vietnamese after they killed millions of Vietnamese, or the Cambodians, or the Laotians when they left bombs in their country still going off today. So I just have very little confidence anything comes out of negotiate with the United States. I think
Mhm.
Iran needs to just be as resolute as they can be, um, and whoever is in their corner to get whoever is whoever are the real allies of Iran, they need to step up and shoulder their responsibilities and push for the end of the hostilities and for the United States to make to be responsible and pay reparations and to end the aggression, to close the military bases. See, I'm for closing U.S. military bases. I'm not for them being anywhere except in the United States territory. And to me, the U.S. base or the U.S. Historical basis for my activism, that's quite radical. The liberals, the progressives, the fake left groups rarely call for closing the bases.
Mhm.
The bases are an extension of U.S. power. And since if you're legitimately supporting the liberation of the people of the world and their right to self-determination and not to be impacted by U.S. hegemony, the U.S. economic reach, the U.S. military reach, the U.S. political reach has to be opposed in all its dimensions. So I'm hoping that Iran can get their 10-point plan met. I do.
Yeah. Oh, I've
But
got that to show you. Yeah, I want to sort of go through that. I've got
right,
it looked up. But
and
you know,
I think I've said enough for now. Thank you.
exactly. The United States, works for itself. They didn't even invite Israel to this negotiation. They didn't even sort of, work
Then
it out,
why
with
then why they
Israel.
have but Abraham, why they have negotiations if the parties involved are not all at the table?
Ah,
What is the purpose? I mean, no, what's the purpose here? Because if Israel is the one if Israel is a vector of the United States military and political and economic thrust in the region, the fact they're not there shows negotiations are a farce.
yeah,
In
yeah,
my,
yeah,
this is my opinion. It's
yeah.
like it's like you have a neighbor next door and you go to okay. Your neighbor next door complains about your dog's barking. The neighbor next door goes to dog court and has makes you come to the court to talk about your dogs. And then the neighbor doesn't show up. But the court goes on because they have authority over you. It's the same kind of nonsense. The neighbor has to show up. So Israel should be compelled to be in the negotiation. If not, they should be ended. Or there's something needs to happen here.
Yeah.
The fact that the United Nations
Uh,
has been such a servile dog. At least I'm not sure everything that's happened with the UN and with this. I haven't done my research. I apologize for that. But
Nothing.
I mean, what's happened with the UN in this? I mean, Israel should be condemned. I mean, the United States should be condemned, but people seem to be scared to do that these days. I don't know what's going on. Anyway,
Yeah,
that's my view. I'm sorry. I'll be quiet.
yeah, yeah. The United States is there, to get what it can, for itself. Didn't even bother, to bring its lapdog, its mad dog, Israel, into the discussions. And they just assumed that Israel was just going to follow through what the United States is pulling off. So, Israel rebels against the United States and goes and bombs Beirut and it looks, see what it can pick up, in Lebanon. Well, soon after, the United States is not in a dominant position anymore, and they're, with trying to play nice with Iran because they want Strait of Hormuz, to be opened up, even if without paying a toll. But I think they would settle for even paying a toll, and allowing their ships to get through. But Israel's there, like mucking it all up. So they Trump calls up Netanyahu and tells him, cool it, like, so right away, same day, like an hour later, like saying, oh, we're going to cool it, we're sort of, not go to, the maximum. Well, like how can one say that, that Israel is the one that pulled the United States into this war? Just because, what was it, J.D. Vance, said that they expected, this to be a regional war, once it was initiated by Israel. So they got involved in it, and this was interpreted to say that it was Israel that had brought the United States into the war. That's
I can
false.
I can respond to that. I can respond to why people think that. I think someone needs to respond to that. I don't think that's been addressed. Okay.
Yeah.
The news media has reported. See, here's the thing about this. The news media reports a lot, and I think some of it people have misunderstood the impact of this reporting. So they report that Bibi and the head of Mossad, excuse me, Prime Minister Netanyahu and the head of Mossad met with Trump and told Trump this is going to be an easy one to do. Blah 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 blah. And Trump did that. This is the narrative. If that's true, then that does give credence to a belief that Israel manipulated the United States to start the war. That is what people are saying. It's probably true. I don't doubt that's true. The
I
United
don't
States,
either. But
but
there's that's just one
Israel,
fact.
I
On the
know.
other side, pushing Trump is also exit.
Oh no, no, I understand that. I understand all that. I'm not. I'm trying to explain to you where one thing that people are going to use. The next thing is the United States gives Israel how much money a year? I mean, billions of dollars a year. And I mean, if all things being said, it's used pretty much to expand Israeli and U.S. dominance in the region. And that's another, I'm saying to you, materially, this is used in the argument to say that the United States is manipulated by Israel. I don't agree with that, but these are facts that people use. They use these facts. And because a lot of money is given to Israel. I mean, it's like ridiculous. And I don't agree with this thing. Well, if you give it to Israel, if you didn't give it to Israel, you could give it to the Americans. But that is true. That is true. If
Yeah.
Israel got no aid at all, not a penny, then a lot of money would be available for other uses. Who says the United States will use it for America? Trump said a few weeks ago, we don't need food money, Medicare and Medicaid. We need money for bombs. So that showed, right? He said that I think a week and a half ago. Well,
Yeah.
that money has to go to that has to come from the states. I'm just saying to you, these are things that people will use as the rationale to justify their statements. I don't agree with them, but I'm just telling you why they say it. That's all. That's it.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. But um, Biden is the one who said that if Israel didn't exist, we'd have to create it. Why? Because it's an arm of the United States in the Orient. This is, the similar pattern, to the various other attempts, to set up an arm of the West in the Orient, which would have a fist around the throat of every other regime there. That's what Israel is. And the same thing was attempted, the first crusade by France, the second crusade by Germany, the Templars, and then even a crusade, by the British, as well, all attempting, to implant themselves in the Orient. And here it is, happening once again. And it is part of the whole theory of the Christian evangelical movement, which invented Zionism to begin with in 1835, I think it was. And it was based on certain passages in the Judaic religious scriptures, which were embedded into the Torah by the editor called Ezra, who created the whole rationale for genocide in reference to the Amalekites, who supposedly were genocided under the authority of Moses, which is not in the first editions of the Torah. It was introduced afterwards by Ezra, who's not even considered much of an authority in terms of Judaism. It was just an editor who was creating a consensus of opinion and injecting both the genocidal and the anti-genocidal mentalities into the same text, because you find the opposition to kingdoms and war and genocide in the writings of Samuel, which opposed the creation of a king, which he conceded to nonetheless, and started this whole mess. And then there was a split between the regions of Samaria and Judea. This is all not understood and ignored, by Zionism and by, everyone else. They don't realize, that there was, this split between Zionism and, well, what I call Bundism right here, at the very beginning, which is still exemplified by the Jewish Palestinians who live in Nablus, who I visited and whose museum I went to, and a video of which I made, which presented that culture there for the first time. And these are the Jewish Samaritans who never joined in the kingdom of Judea and refused to pay taxes for war. Now the same thing's happening again, only this time, the Judeans in the kingdom are, the Zionist state of Israel. And the Samaritans are the Jewish Bund of today. But there's so much ignorance. The left, like most of the popular sort of mentality, thinks Samaritans are Christians. Like it's, the misinformation of what the Jewish people are all about, is very deep. And my attempts, to change that and to educate people of the left even, have failed. And so now I'll go and work with the Palestinians who understand, what Jewish people are as distinct from Zionists, because they have lived with such Jewish people since the beginning and still do. The Samaritans have Palestinian identity papers, Jordanian and of Israeli identities. And they are not, to be excluded from the analysis. But I have the 10 points here that we should refer to. I'll share them.
I appreciate you getting those. Thank you.
Oh, my share button has disappeared. Why is that? Okay, here we go. It's up here. It's hidden away. Okay. Official statement of Iran. On behalf of the Islamic Republic of Iran, I express gratitude and appreciation for my dear brothers, His Excellency Prime Minister of Pakistan, Sharif, and His Excellency Field Marshal Munir, for their tireless efforts to end the war in the region. In response to the brotherly request of Prime Minister Sharif in his tweet, and considering the request by the US for negotiations based on its 15-point proposal, as well as announcement by POTUS, that's Trump, about acceptance of the general framework of Iran's 10-point proposal as a basis for negotiations, I hereby declare, on behalf of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, here's the 10 points. Can't see the first one here. I think I need to change the size of this. Okay, let's start at the bottom. 10th point. Oftentimes, the conclusion is the more important. Commitments to be formalized in a binding UN Security Council resolution turning the agreements into international legal obligations. Oh, this is something new. Asking the United Nations to guarantee negotiations, whereas before the United Nations was ignored by negotiations. This is empowering the United Nations. Interesting. So, of course, this would commit the United Nations to intervening to prevent any violations of a ceasefire. So the United Nations would be obliged to send in military force to stop any military from violating the negotiations. Hmm. And this is like UNIFIL in Lebanon, except they don't do anything there. And three UNIFIL soldiers of Indonesia were killed by the Zionist military in southern Lebanon recently. But the UN should be empowered, as it is here, being to uh, intervene militarily against a Zionist occupation of Lebanon. Hmm. In this case, it would be Iran. Okay, sounds good. 9. Release of blocked Iranian assets abroad. Oh, yes. Um, because a lot of third world countries, they put their savings for international transactions into Western banks in order to facilitate the transfer of such goods. And usually they do it by the SWIFT code, which is controlled by the West as well. And this is also a point that is a precondition for the uh, opening of the Strait of Hormuz for other traffic other than the allies of Tehran. So this is a precondition and not just a negotiating position. Okay, number 8. End the war on all fronts, including against proxies in Lebanon. Proxies is a translation, it's a mistranslation into English. You know, it should be allies. Hezbollah is an ally of Iran.
That's correct. Process is a mistranslation, correct.
Yeah. Ansarallah is an ally of Iran. The United States has an ally too called Israel. So saying proxies, you know, like is delegitimizes the organic, you know, nature of Hezbollah and Ansarallah, who arise out of their own sort of social conditions and with their own popular support. You know, they weren't created by Iran. They're not proxies of Iran. No. Okay. Number 7 here. I wonder how I can sort of do this. Um, I think let me stop share and then I will go into my, yes, yes, bring it down, setting this up here. Okay, just I have to open up the bottom two. Okay, now go back here, share once again with you. Oh, here it is. Yes, here it is. Okay, now into the war on all fronts, including against proxies in Lebanon, against allies in Lebanon. Yes, but you know, something I just noticed here, there's no mention of Gaza. You know, how come they don't say the same thing, including against allies in Lebanon and Gaza? That's what is missing there. Okay, withdrawal of all U.S. combat forces from the region. This is an end, calling for an end to the U.S. military bases in all of the Gulf states. Very good. Absolutely necessary, as you mentioned. Number 6, reparations to Iran for damages. This is very interesting. This is like Uh, very difficult.
I've heard that was modified. I've heard from Western news from sources that demand was modified. I would
Uh,
love to get if and that there's an updated version because that's supposed to have been changed. I'm not sure. People have said that, but I haven't seen any modification of it in print. So people might be lying.
I think you're right. Like I think it's an ambiguous formulation as well because it could either mean that Iran is going to be charging tolls of $2 million per boat. That's only 1%, like it's $1 a barrel of oil, basically, and to pay for the reparations. And then other times I've heard that they're imposing this toll for general revenue, and that reparations are an additional demand of Iran for the damages inflicted upon it. But if they're only asking for reparations from the United States, and then in effect they're not asking for reparations from Israel. So this is unclear, ambiguous. Okay. Number five, ending all UN Security Council and IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency resolutions against Iran. Yeah, yeah. So this would end the sanctions. Uh, yes, it's connected with number four here, lifting all primary and secondary sanctions.
Well, that I think I should say something here about this so far. Any of these demands that require the United States Congress to approve it, forget about it. Any demand that the United States president can just sign a decree, that could happen. I'm not saying it would or wouldn't, but the Congress will not make any adjustments. No, not to my ability, not to my thinking. But I could be wrong.
Okay, lifting of all primary and secondary sanctions. Hmm. Yeah, that's absolutely necessary. Acceptance of Iran's uranium enrichment program. This is an increase. This is new because, before this current war began, negotiations were taking place. Iran had already agreed to limit its uranium enrichment program to something like 5%. And they were ready to hand over its 450 kilograms of enriched uranium. Now they've reversed that. Now they're insisting upon that they have a right to uranium enrichment. And even the vice president of Iran, in an interview, I saw him say that he's in favor of Iran withdrawing from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. He wants a nuclear bomb now, and so do many others, in Iran and in the military, because the previous fatwa of Khomeini and Khomeini, supreme leaders, that opposed the development of a nuclear bomb because it's inhumane, weapon of mass destruction. So they forbid it because even though Iran could have developed a nuclear bomb, they didn't. All the times they were being accused of, like preparing to develop a nuclear bomb, well, even though they had the capacity to do so, they didn't because of the fatwa, which was totally ignored. Then Israel goes ahead and assassinates the the people who issued the fatwa against the development of a nuclear bomb, thereby annulling the fatwa forbidding the development of a nuclear weapon. So now
Well,
Iran, is considering, whether or not it should develop a nuclear weapon to prevent another such, attack on Iran, because they're not going to rely upon the promise of the United States or even on the United Nations, right?
well, just remember Libya and Gaddafi when it comes to point three, okay?
Yeah.
The second you don't have weapons, well, first of all, the ballistic missile development shows you can do a lot without a range, without nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
They have clearly, they have clearly outdone Israel and the United States, in my opinion, on the ballistic missile program. I mean, as
Mm.
far as they've been able to inflict some damage on the enemy without having a nuclear weapon, and is to be commended and show the intelligence of the Iranian society and its educational and military infrastructure to do this. Nobody wants to say that, but I'll say it. It's okay. Let Steve say it, okay? Okay, so if they had a nuclear weapon, they really, or they had, yeah, they had a nuclear weapon, I think everyone would stop, step a little bit more lightly.
Right.
Israel has one. See,
Mm,
Iran doesn't even care about it. They keep attacking it. Israel has it illegally. And for them to use it, it might cause a lot of problems.
mm,
I don't think Israel's too keen to use it because to use it and have it illegally could cause it a lot of problems.
mm.
So, I just want to comment about that. Yeah, I think uranium enrichment, like it or not, is something that people are just going to have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way it goes.
Yeah, no, Iran should have, like formulated it in a general way, saying that they're willing to remain in the nuclear non-proliferation treaty and forbid a nuclear bomb to be developed if all of the states in the region do so as well, including Israel. Okay? Israel would have to give up its nuclear bomb if they wanted to forbid Iran to develop a nuclear bomb. That would have been a better formulation.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what's called editing. They can always edit it. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. Okay, number two is maintenance of Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz. Oh, yeah, that's key. That's very, very key. Yeah. So, and
Yeah,
also, the strait goes through the deep water strait goes through the territorial waters of Iran. There's no
well,
doubt about that.
the one
Oman
thing
has
that's
control over
important,
the other side, but it's not as deep water as, the strait going through Iran's territorial waters.
the one thing that's important about this, and I got that from reading, I got this from someone online, online commentator last week. This imposition of the reason that the prices are going up is in large measure because Iran or the world is now feeling the same kind of sanctions economically that Iran has felt for 40 some odd years. The world does not face sanctions, does not feel sanctions. Only the targets of imperialism face sanctions. But
Mm,
now with the maintenance of the control of the Straits of Hormuz and the subsequent increase in the price of energy, in particular oil, the world is now feeling a sanction. That's how I look at the prices, at the gas increase in prices. That now the capitalist markets are facing sanctions or a form of economic retaliation from Iran, and the world is not used to. That's why they're opposed to this. The imperialists, especially the United States, I I will never agree to it, even though they might not be able to stop it from happening. That causes the world capitalist markets to to re to that it causes a change in how the price occurs because Iran is making the world pay a sanction for their aggression. And this
mm,
is, if you look at it like that, you still have pain in your pocketbook. But before, Iran was paying sanction because of the imperialists. Now the world energy markets are paying a sanction because of what they did to Iran 40 days ago.
mm,
That's
mhm.
when it happened, didn't it? That's when it happened. All of a sudden
Yeah,
the price has gone up.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. This also, number two, maintenance of Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz. This reverses the whole imperialist tool of sanctions. All of a sudden, this third world country is imposing sanctions on the first world.
Sure
You
is.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
reversing the whole sanctions
Yeah.
trip.
Reversing the whole sanctions the whole sanctions paradigm
Yeah.
because this is what this is something I've been talking not a lot about, but I do say it from time to time. The whole idea of sanctions is so devastating and so controlling over and the ICC, by the way, the ICJ and the ICC, they have such a control sanctions over countries, and no one has a say in it. There's no vote. There's no debating. There's no appeal. I'm
Mm,
just going to sanction you. Why? Because I can. Well, guess what happened?
mm,
Iran said, you know what? I'm going to play the same game with you. I'm
mhm.
going to seize the Strait of Hormuz. I'm going to control it. Guess what? You pay my money because of me. Hey, turn about must be fair play, right? You've been doing it for decades, for centuries. Now I'm doing it to you. How's it feel?
Yeah, yeah, really. Okay, now the number one guarantee of non-aggression against Iran. Okay. Um, Lebanon's not mentioned there. There's no Lebanon delegation at the negotiations. And what does guarantee mean? Who's going to guarantee non-aggression against Iran? You know, United
It
States is
has
supposed to guarantee this, like,
it has to be point 10, the United Nations.
yeah,
That's the only guarantee. That's the only. Okay, we're not in Star Trek where there's a federation that guarantees all guarantee where the federation will come in, step in, and clean this up. There's no
yeah,
Star Trek government here, so since they ain't happening, the only person who can guarantee anything is either the world community of citizens or the United Nations of countries.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
who else is going to guarantee it? Nobody.
yeah,
And Israel has to sign this document. Any
yeah,
agreement has to be signed by it's not, it's just null and void.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
In my
Guarantee.
in my
Okay, so it has to be United Nations like UNIFIL, the troops.
right.
United Nations has to have a an international volunteer military force that can intervene and stop any aggression that considers to be illegal.
Yeah, something. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I think we should write up our I won't say corollary, but our opinion of things that should be added here, post them somewhere. Because I think we're making it. I haven't seen anybody else talk about this in that way, nor have I seen anybody else make anyone else make written or public statements. We're making some, I think, positive suggestions for improvements in the document.
yeah,
We're not condemning it. We're saying it could be improved. Yeah,
yeah.
that's all.
So,
Yeah.
Iranian delegation, please pay attention to this video. This is for you. Okay. Um, I have I have another video to share, which is on Tehran. But do you have something that you wanted to bring up in particular?
My comments are just that, about the sanctions, about Israel. You mentioned very pointedly the need to include Gaza and in this in our conversation. I think it's very important. My addition is just when has the United States kept any treaty they've signed with anybody? I mean, not maybe with NATO, maybe there should be some blocks somewhere in the history they have kept an agreement. But when it comes to a country that they have bombed and dominated, and they have bombed and have dominated Iran, I think we can say that accurately. They don't do that. So Iran is going to have to face that reality that even though they will hope to have negotiated settlement, a negotiated end of hostilities. Um, don't expect the United States to agree to anything. Only thing they agree to is what they see is in their interests.
Yeah.
That's it.
And then the day after, they decide it's not in their interests. Yeah, I know.
Exactly.
Okay, here's a interview. This is a former member of the Iranian parliament. And Iran has a position in the Iranian parliament which is reserved for a Jewish delegate elected by the Jewish community of Iran, by the Jewish Iranians. This guy is here speaking in English. He's Jewish Iranian, former member of parliament, and he's standing in front of the wreckage of a Jewish synagogue that was bombed by Israel. Israel bombed a synagogue, a Jewish synagogue, because they're not Zionists. So this demonstrates, difference between Zionism and Jewishness.
Last night, there was an attack against a synagogue in Tehran, and it shows that the Zionistic regime has not any belief in the Jewish principles, and they are not follow Moses. They are not enemy of Iranian army. They are enemy of Iranian people. They are enemy of Iranian nation because Iranian people are great people who does not want to obey the Zionism and the USA. And when you do not want to obey the powerful man who wants to follow Satan, they would attack you, of course. So their propaganda that we want to help the Iranian people, I think it's a joke, unbelievable joke from them. And of course, they are enemy of all of the Iranian people. They want and they're ready to kill all of us to achieve their goals. Last night, there was an attack against us.
That's pretty clear. Says Israel, the Zionists bombed the Torah. They bombed, the Torah, the founding document, which is, inside the synagogue in the tabernacle there. It got bombed. It's, buried under the rubble of that synagogue right now. And how the Zionists can claim to be representing the Jewish people is impossible. After such an act, it should be evident, but it's not known. So that's why we're making it known here and now. So that's the way it is in the here and now. And here and now, we are here as well, to tell you that now is a time, to prepare for the change that is happening in the world, But this change, this revolutionary transformation of the world is not possible if we don't have the preconditions. And the preconditions are based upon the conceptual underpinnings of what the revolution is all about. And we have to recognize the predominant role of the United States in this reactionary fascistic movement that is happening, sweeping over the world, that is being blocked now by Iran, that had been blocked by Hamas in Gaza, that is being blocked by Hezbollah in Lebanon and Ansar Allah. Multi-front war, contestation between the national liberation movements of the world, which are insisting upon the rule of law, even though the rule of law and United Nations and all that, was initially set up, only for the Western powers, to regulate, their own relations. They had no respect whatsoever for the rights, that they assumed for themselves to actually apply to the third world nations that are becoming independent after the Second World War. Oh, no. They became members of the United Nations General Assembly, but they were not considered to be sovereign nations, as in the paradigm, that they had worked out for themselves in order to end the Second World War. No, that didn't apply, to the Third World. They could be invaded at any time for any reason whatsoever by anybody else that had the might, insisting upon its right to do so. So all that's being overthrown now by Iran. I think it's going to win. And there we go. That's what it is. for the here and now. Bye for now, and please share. And I think we've given you enough reason to do so.